Good evening. It's October 17th, and I'm feeling blue today. Not mood-wise, but I just love this color. I love dark blue. I think this is cobalt blue. There's another name that I can't remember the name of it. Anyhow, I'm drinking water. And also I made me some mint tea. And this is mint that I have outside. And it's good because right now it's kind of chilly out. It's kind of chilly in here too, but that's why I have my hair down. I usually don't wear my hair down because it's too hot to wear it down. But today, I felt like wearing it down because it keeps me a little warm when it's down. Okay, so I hope most of you stayed away from all those processed carbs that I mentioned last week. I hope that you didn't drink any sodas that are so bad for you. But anyhow, if you did, that's fine. If you didn't, that's awesome. So let me continue with what we did last week. We'll continue with type 2 diabetes. And I made an outline because if I don't create an outline, I'll go on rants and then I forget where I left off. And that's not good because I want to stay on course and communicate what I want to share with you. All these videos are for you and to share what I've learned and what I'm learning. And with type 2 diabetes being an epidemic, it's very, very important that I share things with you that you won't listen to in your local news. And a lot of doctors don't know these things that I'm going to tell you. It's not because they're stupid. Doctors study a lot. They study a lot of things in medical school, but they do not study human nutrition. They don't. I think of 4 or 6 years that they do in medical school. I believe from what I've learned from doctors and what I've read, and a number of doctors have said that they have, I believe, 4 to 6 hours of nutrition, very basic nutrition, basically just covering the macros and how to keep patients alive. So that's very, very little. So that tells me that we need to take our health into our own hands if we're going to live long, healthy lives. And that's what I'm out to do. Like I said, at 57 years young, I know I'm aging, but I will go down with the fight. I will age gracefully as much as I can. And now with all this information that we have with the internet and Google and just all this information that we have easy access to. And so I'm going to start with a little recap of last week, really quick. I'm not going to do so much about last week, and I am going to wear my glasses because I can't read without my glasses. Okay, so first, type 2 diabetes, like I said, and I emphasize that it's preventable and reversible with the proper knowledge. And we all know, unfortunately, someone that has type 2 diabetes. There's millions and millions of people that are suffering from this chronic disease. And a lot of people that I know personally have died from complications of type 2 diabetes because nobody dies of type 2 diabetes. People die from complications of type 2 diabetes, which oftentimes it's heart disease, heart attacks. They get amputations, Alzheimer's, all kinds of things that happen if you don't change your diet. It is a dietary disease, and that's why drugs can't help it. It seems like it does, but it doesn't for the long term, because I know that from what I've studied and from people that I know personally, the doctor tends to give you a pill to lower your blood sugar, but that's not what type 2 diabetes is all about. It's basically insulin resistance, and I'm going to tell you a little more about that. Type 2 diabetes, it's a chronic progressive disease if you allow it to, and lowering your blood sugars is not the biggest thing that you need to do. Let's see, it's curable. So, okay, we got that out of the way. Let's see. God, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to cover. It's been around for a long time, about 3,000 years. So it's been around for a long, long time. Nowadays, unfortunately, it's affecting every age, both sexes, all education levels, and every ethnic group. Unfortunately, it's affecting a lot of little children, adolescents, and mothers that are already diabetic when they're pregnant. It's just really sad, but they just don't know that they don't know, right? And so that's it. Okay, so we got that out of the way. And then I, as I told you last week, it was fun to Google some lies. Can type 2 diabetes be cured? And they say no, it just can be managed. But it can be, and we already talked about that. When did it become an epidemic? Probably back in the 80s, or maybe sooner than that, but I'd say 70s, 80s, it's been a real problem. And it's just gotten worse and worse. We touched a little bit on type 1 diabetes, which is people that need insulin. But the type 2 diabetics, they don't need insulin. They need to quit eating all that garbage, processed carbs. Okay, so it's not genetic. And we talked about that last week. It's not genetic. It's not genetic. It's what's handed down is how we eat. My mom taught me how to cook, how to eat, and remember when we talked about the digestive system, we dictate our children's diet. Like I told you before, the digestion begins in the mouth, and carbs is what begins to digest your food. And when you're an infant, before you get your molars, you can't digest, you don't have the enzymes to digest starch. So when we force that in our little babies, it sets them up for a lot of problems. And so, and I remember, now that I think about it, now that I know what I know, I remember I always had a belly. I just couldn't get rid of a belly till maybe just in the last about 5 years ago, and especially about 2 years ago when I learned about the keto protocol, and that really helped me lose the last 20 stubborn pounds that I had forever. But we grew up, my great-great-grandparents, my grandparents, my mother, and I did for, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, up to 10 years ago, we were raised with tortillas, rice, beans. Those were our main staples. And then, of course, on the holidays, we had tamales. Birthdays, maybe we had mole, enchiladas, things like that. Tacos were kind of like, maybe for Americans, grilled cheese or hamburgers, things like that. Every culture has different staples in their, I think Americans, they eat a lot of bread and biscuits, depending on what part of the U.S. you're from, gravy, things like that. So we were raised on those kind of things. So it's not hereditary. It's what it is seems hereditary is because of the foods that were handed down to us from our ancestors. And so depending on your culture, that's what you learn. So type 2 diabetes is definitely not genetic. And that's something that you need to know, because a lot of people think that. So back in the day, I have to tell you, our ancestors consumed under 50 grams of carbs a day. Okay? Under 50 grams a day. Now, most people are consuming a whopping 150 to 300 grams per day. That's a lot of carbs. And so our pancreas wasn't designed to release insulin so often and so much and just in one day. It's it's amazing that we don't just drop dead. But that's why a lot of people are sick and dying, because your pancreas can only handle so much. All your organs, actually. So your poor pancreas doesn't know what to do with so many carbs, and it's just ramping up just too much insulin. And so this has been going on for the last 40 to 60 years, and we're paying for it. A lot of people are paying for it. It's really, really sad. And if you think about it too, it's also an epidemic for the cats and dogs. I'm surrounded by people, and I know of people, and I was guilty of it about maybe 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Dogs are very obese. A lot of dogs are obese. A lot of dogs and cats. I just discovered probably 10 years ago, one of my neighbor's grandson was given injecting his cat with insulin. I was like, wow, really? I didn't know animals get insulin, but they have the epidemic too. Poor fur babies. Most of them are being fed grain-fed diets and many snacks throughout the day. And that's one thing that I've learned to do. I eliminated those rawhides that are, if you Google how they're made, terrible process. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad I watched that video, because our poor dogs were ingesting those awful fake rawhide bones, even though it says 100% natural rawhide. So our dogs are also obese, getting diabetes, suffering, and dying young. So we have a pet obesity epidemic. For the same reason, we have a human type 2 diabetic epidemic. So that's not a good thing. So what else? So after 3,000 years, why is there no cure for type 2 diabetes? Or why are they not reversing it or preventing it? Well, I believe, and I know for sure, that most people have been misinformed, misled, or lied to by their doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, nurse practitioners, a lot of people in the medical field, that they don't know jack about human nutrition, and they're just repeating things that they studied. It's not a conspiracy. I mean, nutritionists and dietitians, they mean well, but so it's just a lot of misinformation and just being misinformed. And then, of course, there's a lot of doctors. I've met quite a few doctors. I worked at a hospital not too long ago, and I've met quite a few doctors that they do the keto diet and low carb diet, and they lose a lot of weight, and they do reverse their type 2 diabetes. But for some reason, they don't tell their patients that. And I think sometimes it's due because a lot of people don't want to listen, and or they don't want to take the time to explain it to them, and or they just don't want to admit that they've been wrong for so many years, because most doctors do push metformin and all those other drugs, diabetic drugs, and eventually insulin, and then eventually dialysis. So, and then if you notice, there's a lot of dialysis centers coming up. Have you noticed that? I know I have. There's a lot more than, I'd never seen so many dialysis centers like I do now. So anyhow, that also is another thing. We've given full reign of our health to the healthcare professionals, and again, they don't know much about nutrition, and that's a sad thing. So these videos, every video that I make, my whole mission is about to try to lead you to begin to take your health into your own hands, because obviously for the longest time it's been in the wrong hands, right? And so also, by the time you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, you've had it for 7 to 14 years. So it's very sad when the doctor tells you you're pre-diabetic, or you have fatty liver disease. That's the time to put the brakes on, because pretty much right after your fatty liver disease, they say you're pre-diabetic, which it's a bunch of baloney. We'll talk about the test in a minute, but we're going to start with we're going to start with, I'm going to tell you a little story, okay? And I'm probably going to deviate from there a little bit, because sometimes I just can't. If I don't tell you something, I'll forget. But we're going to talk about, let's talk about Tommy. It's one of my dog's names, Tommy. Let's talk about Tommy. Tommy goes to the doctor once a year. And there's a lot of employers that with the insurance that you have, they want you to go to see a doctor once a year for your wellness visit. That's pretty common. And when I worked for a doctor in particular, they would make calls to their patients and remind them that they have they're due for a wellness exam. And every year, let's say Tommy goes to see his doctor, and the insurance covers, this is what you need to know for those of you that have insurance. The insurance covers basic test, lab work that doesn't tell you a whole lot about your type 2 diabetes. So let me see if I can find that. What the doctor does, he orders the what the insurance pays for, and they usually cover the BMP, basic metabolic panel, that checks for kidneys and electrolytes, calcium level, etc. This basic metabolic panel, you can Google all this, okay? I'm not a doctor, but everything I've learned is from doctors, medical books, and I've studied a lot. And so as a nutrition coach, I've made it my business to go the extra mile. And so you don't need to be a doctor to understand your blood work, okay? Or to know what to ask the doctor to order. Because if your insurance doesn't pay for it, but let me finish this thought first. The insurance usually covers basic metabolic panels, your lipid panel, which tests for cholesterol levels, measures lipids, fats, fatty substances, triglycerides, etc. So you can also Google lipid panel. Urinalysis, and that helps to diagnose urinary tract infections, kidney disorders, etc. And finally, the CBC, complete blood count. And that's pretty much what insurances will pay for. Sometimes the doctor doesn't know, and he'll order more, and then that's when you end up having to foot the bill. But for the most part, this is what the insurances cover. But that's not what you need. That's not the blood work that you need. What you need for the doctor to really pinpoint what your type 2, where your if you have type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, is something called your A1C. And that is something that I paid for that. In fact, earlier this year, I paid for, and you do sometimes have to pay for your blood work if you don't have insurance. Like at the time, I didn't have insurance. The A1C was about $26. And that one will tell you if you're pre-diabetic or not. And that one, I looked it up on the internet, and it says that your normal A1C is below 5.7. They say 5.7 to 6.4 indicates pre-diabetes. That's wrong. I mean, the higher the number, the greater the risk that you develop type 2 diabetes. But they're wrong. When it's above 5.4, you're pre-diabetic. Don't wait till it gets to 5.7. And you need to really get serious about your diet once it goes above 5.4. Mine was at 5.2. That's a good number to have. And so if it goes, I'm telling you, if it goes above 5.4, you need to really put the brakes on and be serious about your diet that I'll tell you about in a little bit. C-peptide. There's 3 that you want your doctor to order. And the doctor works for you. Remember that. He's not doing you any favors. You pay him or someone pays him, but he's not doing you any favors. He works for you. And a good doctor will say, sure, there's nothing wrong with you asking for extra tests. I mean, when they draw the blood, they it's not like they have to draw anymore or whatever. But anywho, A1C, it's about $26 if the insurance doesn't pay for it. C-peptide, that's about $29 to $55. Okay, and then a fasting insulin test, $22 to $300. I don't know why the range is so different like that, but so those are the three things that you want your doctor to add, in addition to what the standard lab work that your insurance will only cover. But if they don't cover these three, ask your doctor to test your A1C, your C-peptide, and your fasting insulin test. And A1C is also the same as HbA1c, hemoglobin A1c. It should be lower than 5.4. So remember, if it's higher than 5.4, you're already pre-diabetic. Don't believe that lie that 5.7 to 6.4. And so anyhow, so see, I should have followed my notes. Okay, so Tommy goes to the doctor. He gets his blood work done. He's a little overweight. There's nothing showing on his blood work that maybe his blood glucose is a little high, but the doctor says, well, it's a little high, but it's not a big deal, which it is a big deal, but this is usually how it goes. And so he tells Tommy, just exercise a little bit more. A lot of times they refer them to the nutritionist or the dietitian. And when that happens, that is a big problem, because the dietitian or the nutritionist, usually the dietitian, they don't know jack about nutrition either. You'd think they would, but they don't, because you have to remember that listen to this. The academies of nutrition and dietetic schools are funded or sponsored by companies like McDonald's, PepsiCo, Sara Lee, General Mills, Kellogg's, Kraft, the Sugar Association, etc. And these companies make their money off of carbs that are garbage. So that is not good. So these nutritionists, dietitians, they're under government guidelines. And so the government guidelines are very biased. They're not going to have your interests, your health in mind. You know what I'm saying? So when I found this out, I'm like, wow. And because I wanted to be a nutritionist at one time, and but I thought I'd be fired by now. I'd have my license taken away, because I have to go by what the guidelines, the government guidelines are, which is promoting carbs. And most nutritionists will tell you to eat, some of them will tell you to eat 3 meals a day, sometimes 6. They want you to eat 40 to 60 grams of carbs per meal. That's a lot of carbs. I usually get 20 to 30 a day. They want you 40 to 60 grams of carbs per meal. And then they want you to have 20 grams of carbs with snacks that have about 20 grams of carbs. That is a lot of carbs. And then they tell you that saturated fat will make your diabetes worse. That's bad advice. Bad advice. But they don't mean harm. I knew a nutritionist that I thought I could help out, and maybe I don't know, silly me. I was hoping I could help her clients or patients as a nutrition coach, help them to get them off of insulin diabetes medication. But it was a flat out no, because insurance doesn't pay for nutrition coaches. But I guarantee you, in about 10 years, there will be a lot of nutrition coaches that will be hired, because there's already a lot of them hiring in different companies and that, but nutrition coaches are they're really coming up. There's more of them helping different clinics in bigger cities, Austin, Houston, just different big cities in the big states But so yeah, I couldn't work with her because also I'd be going against I'd be going against the advice that she gives, and so that wouldn't have worked anyway. But when I did go to one of the diabetic classes that they offer for diabetics. I guess they want to teach them things, whatever. Where's it at? I'll show it to you in a minute. But she basically, I sat there in the class, and she thought I had type 2 diabetes. But I sat in the class. Everybody has type 2 diabetes. There's probably about 15 people there. They had door prizes. And did they have snacks? No, I don't think. They just had water. But she talked about, yeah, you should eat, don't eat too much wheat bread, eat more vegetables, less fat, less saturated fat, cut down on your salt, bunch of lies. And then the rest of it, the last half hour she was promoting I never knew about these little insulin pens that they have that, they're advanced now. You just inject them, or it tells you when it's time to do it again, or just a little advanced insulin, injector of sorts. But she was promoting different things for these companies, diabetes drugs. And so at the end, they gave out, she was giving out these little CDs, living with diabetes. And so, in other words, expect to live with it, right? Expect to suffer and go from the pill to insulin to amputations, different heart disease, Alzheimer's, and ultimately a lot of people go to dialysis. But this was living with diabetes, understanding diabetes, what you need to know, healthy eating, being active, monitoring. That's where in the back you have Merck, One Touch, Contour, Nutrisystem, One Touch, Dreams, all these companies that I imagine sponsor this. Problem solving, medications, reducing risks, and healthy coping. And this DVD is the most comprehensive and easy to follow program for patients with diabetes that I have seen. R, PhD, blah, blah, blah. And which doesn't mean jack to me, because obviously they don't know that they're doing more harm than good promoting this kind of nonsense. But again, most doctors are quite pleasant. They're very nice. I know some that are very nice, very sweet. They just don't know that they don't know. And that's fine. But so anyhow, also you have to remember that most doctors, like 95% of them, are in bed with big pharma and most politicians. And that's why, a lot of them want to promote these drugs because, they get trips paid for by different big pharma companies. And then a lot of people that are trying to get politicians to go against big pharma, they won't, because they're all in bed together. But anyway, that's another video. So basically, the doctor starts Tom on metformin, and then a few months later, he tells him, if your blood glucose is up a little bit, we'll give you another pill. And then if Tom doesn't feel better and he gains weight, because insulin makes you gain weight, it's a fat storage hormone. And then eventually, when the glucose is too high, then the doctor wants to do recommend the insulin, and then back to the dietitian, where the dietitian is going to tell you what to eat, because you don't know what to eat, right? In the meantime, Tom has switched from good pastured butter to that toxic margarine. If you use margarine, please throw it out. It's nothing but poison. Tom is trimming the fat from his steaks, which is very good for you, the fat. And they were concerned about cholesterol, which high cholesterol is good for you. My cholesterol was about 300, but my A1C was 5.2. So high cholesterol is good if your HDL is high. It just depends. It's never just one thing. There's different variables. When people they were concerned about me. This was last year too, earlier this year, when I had it was over 300 my cholesterol level, and I received a letter, I got a phone call. They were worried about me. They wanted me to see a heart specialist and all this. I just laughed. But you know how many people would actually fall for that? Oh no, something's wrong with me. My cholesterol is high. Well, you got to listen to your body. If you feel good and your A1C is low and you're eating the right things, your body will let you know. So I wasn't alarmed by that. And I was told by a very functional nurse practitioner that leans towards holistic approaches more than drugs, and she told me all your lab work is wonderful, so not to worry about anything. So it helps to, I'm not a doctor. There's a lot of things I don't know. There's a lot of things that I do know, but the things that I don't know, if they're too lengthy or if they take too much time for me to study or to read about, I'll call my nurse practitioner. She's actually my sister, but she'll tell me, yeah, and she'll give me a rundown, so I don't have to spend 2 hours on the computer. But so it's nice to have that option. And then also there's something else here. This is a book. I have a lot of books. I buy a lot of books, but this is a good book to buy. Interpreting Your Blood Work. There's other ones. How to read it and natural ways to improve your results. And so this is just your doctor has ordered blood tests, but do you know how to read the results? So this is a good little book. It's only it's about 150 pages, and it helps that I'm an avid reader. So I order books often, and I usually sometimes, most of the time, I order them used in very good condition. So this one was practically new, but I get them very inexpensive. So this is a good book if you want to learn about your blood work. And then, of course, you can Google things. A lot of times Google is very inaccurate, but for the most part, if you want to look up your analysis and CBC and what A1C is and all that kind of good stuff, they'll give you information. But like I said earlier, the A1C they lie about that. They don't want you to be alarmed until it hits 5.7, 5.8. By that time, you're full-blown diabetic, and that's not a good thing. So, okay, so they start Tom. I told you they start him on that. Okay, so you have to keep in mind that when the doctor sends you to the nutritionist or the dietitian, you're wasting your time. Don't even go to the nutritionist. They don't know jack about real nutrition, human nutrition. Anytime they tell you about my plate and about the wheat and the oatmeal and cut the fats and eat more fruits, eat more vegetables, that's bad advice. And again, it's not a conspiracy, but that's and they're nice. It's just what they're taught, so you can't blame them. And I don't. I just have to laugh at their ignorance. But they'll get on board eventually, because a lot of people are coming to know that the diabetes is reversible and preventable, and I've made it my business to know that a lot of these doctors that are coming out and realizing that they've been doing their patients a lot of harm. It's so admirable of these doctors to be like this, but a lot of them are getting a lot of backlash, a lot of things that negative things happen to them, because that makes the other doctors look bad, and it makes them realize that, wow, I have to kind of I have to kind of go backtrack and tell my patients how wrong I was for so many years. And a lot of patients have died under doctors' care that are not taking the time to read about all this new information. In the last 10 years, there's new research, medical research. This is not none of this is my opinion. Well, about my food, yeah, about my personal life, it's my opinion. But all of this I'm telling you, this is all scientific research, scientific things that that in the last 10 years, these scientists and doctors and all these things that, you know, it's really what's has changed, you know, how it's changing. Even medical schools nowadays, they're beginning to introduce some classes about nutrition, and they're starting to learn things about the keto protocol, because, and also when you ask your doctor, I know this one nutritionist that I went to, I told her that I had been doing keto and that I lost like 20 pounds. She just threw a fit. She's like, oh, keto isn't for everybody. Keto isn't good for women. She just got really, really emotional. And I thought, wow. I was like, whoa. And so when a doctor gets upset about that, when you tell them that you're doing keto and you've lost 20 pounds and you're not on drugs anymore, you're not taking this pill or that pill, if they get upset about that, I personally would go to a different doctor. Look for a functional doctor. Just Google functional doctor. They have them in every state, in every city. Look for a functional doctor. Those functional doctors, unlike the allopaths, look up allopath. That's another video. But allopaths usually go to, they believe in a pill for every ill. And they like to medicate and operate. Oh, this hurts. Oh, let's take it out. Get your gallbladder out. Oh, that hurts. Get your gallbladder out. Oh, that hurts. Let's take it out. Whatever. That's what they do. But the functional doctors, they take more time with you. And okay, Alicia, what have you been eating? What's your typical diet? Do you drink a lot of sodas? Do you smoke? Do you drink a lot of alcohol? How much are you exercising? They take the time to talk to you. And then even better is the naturopathic doctors. They don't have one in this area, but they have them in larger cities. And I would love to visit regularly a naturopathic doctor. But I do read a lot of, I have a couple of my favorites of allopathic doctor, naturopathic doctor. One of them is Peter Glidden. He's really good. And Dr. Wallach, Wallach. But Dr. Glidden, Peter Glidden, he's awesome. I have all his books. Okay, so let's see. So after 3 months, the doctor wants to put Tommy on insulin. But in the meantime, Tom has stopped eating bacon. He, like I told you, trimmed the fat from his steaks. He's eating less eggs. Eggs are wonderful for you. He switched from real butter to toxic. Okay, I told you that. So 3 months later, the doctor wants to put him on insulin. Tom is really trying. He is. Most people really do try. He just doesn't understand, like most people, that he's receiving the wrong information. And you know what? At the end of the day, there's a lot of Tommies out there that think it's type 2 diabetes is hereditary. And that's really sad because it's not. It's not. And so what I want to do too today, before, unlike any other weeks, what I want to do is also tell you, I want to start recommending, if you're an avid reader, I would love to start recommending good books that will help you in this health and wellness, to improve your health and wellness journey here. And I have a lot of books. There's some that are easier to read and more user-friendly. And if you're an avid reader and you really care about your health and you really want to be healthy, because a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of this type 2 diabetes at 20 and 30 years old, people are they're so sick. They're dying in their 20s because they don't know that that they can change, that they can improve their lifestyle just by doing a couple simple things. But there's a book in particular that I want you to, and I didn't bring it with me, but I left it at the table and I don't want to get up right now. But anyhow, it's called Lies My Doctor Told Me, Medical Myths That Can Harm Your Health. And that's by Ken D. Berry, MD. And I'll put that in the notes below the video. Lies My Doctor Told Me. That's an excellent book. And so, and I do enjoy listening to Ken Berry's videos. You'll see him on YouTube. And so that's a good book that you may want to order. I got it online through Amazon. I think I got it like half off. But yeah, so that's one of my books in my library. He's one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite doctors, and I've learned a lot from him. And so I encourage you, if you're an avid reader, instead of reading a novel or magazines or the newspaper, start reading these books that will help you. There's thousands of books on health and wellness, and a lot of them are not credible. So the books that I've purchased and read, and I keep them as reference, and there's just some that I just love. And so everything I'm telling you on these videos is from me standing on these shoulders of these very intelligent doctors that they've done their research, and these are all medical and scientific facts. And every week I'm going to share a good book with you from my library. And but yeah, definitely that's a good book. So so for the most part, yeah, it's all about what you put in your mouth on a daily basis. And so you need to get your blood sugar checked. You need to check it yourself. You can buy, that's another thing I need to talk about. When your doctor sees you, if you can't afford these additional tests, because I know sometimes, you can't. And so get a glucometer, buy one. They're about $45 to $50 through Amazon, a glucometer. Mojo is a good one. I'm going to order that eventually. But after you eat something, test your blood. And if it goes up to, I believe, over 140, you're in a little bit of trouble there. So you need to check yourself. You need to get your A1C checked. It's only about $26, so that's affordable. That's a nail job. I don't get my nails done, but if you get your nails done, I think that's probably about $50, I think. But you can easily not get your nails done 1 month and get your A1C done and checked. And that's the best one. If it's over 5.4, you need to really get serious about your health. And so I want to also tell you that back in the day, which I think back in the day, we if you noticed, I think most people my age, in my 50s, most people remember that back in the day, the gas stations, before I get that, I'm going to read something to you that I think most people in their 50s and 60s can relate to, because I don't think people in their 20s can relate to this. But back when I was a child, back in the 60s and 70s, we used to eat out maybe once or twice a year, as far as I can remember, because there's 8 of us. So maybe the older ones ate out more. I don't know. I don't remember eating out till I was about, 17. When I was in 11th or 12th grade. Pizza, it was something that I thought basically Italians ate, or when my older brother worked at a pizzeria, he would bring pizzas home, but that wasn't very, very often. Fruit, we only ate it. We usually ate it when it was seasonal or what grew nearby. I remember there was a blackberry bush, because I was raised in Detroit, in the back alley, and I just used to pick them. I'm sure it was other people too. We used to pick them and eat them. Didn't wash them. We just, if there was a little bug or whatever, we just take it off. But we just eat them. But your lips got purple, tongue got purple. But we just used to eat them off the bush. I miss those days when you could eat fruit like that off the tree or bush, but and our chips were plain. Cake, sodas, ice cream. We typically just had them for birthdays, and there was 8 of us, but there's 2 birthdays in October. Yeah, there's August, May. It wasn't every month. There's 8 of us, but it wasn't every month. But I remember that was a time when we had cake, sodas, and ice cream for birthdays. And at Halloween, back in the day, we would, have candy for the whole year. My mother would give us 1 piece, like every day. I mean, it just used to last us forever. We only drank Kool-Aid and water. And then eventually my mom would make Tang. And none of us I never heard of yogurt till I became an adult. Never heard of seaweed or kebabs, none of that stuff till I got older. Water came out of tap. Never drank bottled water till I got older. Gas stations back in the day only sold gasoline, oil. They checked your oil. Tires, batteries, cigarettes, sometimes chewing gum. Now, I don't know if you've been to, there's a store called, in Texas here it's called Buc-ee's. But most gas stations now, they sell food, snacks, they sell sodas, beer, clothing, blankets, maps, hats, everything. But Buc-ee's, that's like the world's biggest convenience store here in Texas. It's like a gas station on steroids. But man, they sell everything. I think they're known for their taffy or some kind of candy. But so nowadays, we're just surrounded by processed garbage. You go to a hospital and they actually have vending machines, and I didn't know this until I started working at a hospital. But they have vending machines. They have vending machines at schools, I'm pretty sure. They have them at rest areas. They have them kind of like everywhere, but everywhere you go, you can't go anywhere without, if your kids go with you, Dad, buy me this, Dad, I want some chips, Dad, and the chips go well with sodas, right? So we're just, we're just bombarded by so much stuff. We live in this fast culture. We live in this culture of nobody wants to cook anymore. And as a nutrition coach, I've discovered that people don't cook anymore. It's like it's such a job for them. And most of the time too nowadays, back in the 50s and 60s, I don't remember any one-parent homes. I think his wife had died, and he was raising the boys, him and his parents. They're the kids' grandparents, but overall, everybody, there was no single parents. So all these kids, all of us went home, and my mother always had food. She was always making tortillas, and she always had food for us, ready for us. And so that's another thing. Our culture has changed a lot, where we go home, the kids go home, and they put things in the oven. Popcorn, now you just buy it in a bag and put it in the microwave. TV dinners, all these things that I never ate as a child. So it's no wonder that a lot of kids, it's so sad, a lot of kids have diabetes at 10, 12, 15 years old. It's so sad. And it's all about just eliminating carbs. If you have type 2 diabetes, eliminate all the carbs. If you have prediabetes, if you have a fatty liver disease, cut all the carbs. I'm talking everything. Fruit, because fruit breaks down to sugar, to glucose, fructose. And when you're very obese or overweight, and your body already has a lot of glycogen stored, which is fat, and you don't need to eat fruits. If you don't eat fruits for a year, I promise you're not going to die. You're not going to get sick. You may crave something, but until your A1C goes back down to something normal like 5.2, then you can eat fruit maybe once a week or something like that. But right now, if you're pre-diabetic, if you got a fatty liver disease, eliminate all the carbs, all the fruit, and most vegetables. unless they're dark green vegetables. Potatoes, stay away from potatoes. Pastas, all that stuff. Even if it says organic, non-GMO, stay away from them. Your body doesn't need them if you're pre-diabetic. And next month, I'm really gonna drive it home and show you really how your body deals, how your pancreas deals with sugar and carbs, and I'm really going to get down to the nitty-gritty to where you'll understand. I'm going to have a good demonstration so that you can really understand it, because your doctor will not explain this to you. It takes about 15-20 minutes, maybe half an hour for you to understand it. And so I'm going to drive it home next Saturday. But in the meantime, please don't eat any carbs. And remember what it says in 3 John 1:2. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. So remember that God wants you healthy. Our bodies were not designed to process all this garbage. Our bodies were not designed to eat 4 meals a day. Our bodies were not designed to eat 4 meals a day, 3 meals a day with 2 snacks in between, and all those carbs. So I encourage you to join me next Saturday for this demonstration that I'm going to have for you. I think you're really going to enjoy it and understand it and make sense out of it, to where you will really begin to ask your doctor questions and start investigating, taking your health into your own hands. And so in the meanwhile, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click subscribe on the bottom there. And until next week, have a wonderful weekend. The rest of it, because tomorrow's Sunday already. Yeah. Have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful week, and I will see you next Saturday, Lord willing. Be well, be blessed, and I hope I encouraged you in some way today. And if you have any questions, any comments, just comment below there, and I will get back with you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.